Aging is often spoken about as if it were a passive process, something that happens simply because the calendar moves forward. Yet biology tells a more precise story. The body is not counting years, it is responding to signals. Every day, cells interpret instructions coming from food, sleep, stress, and movement. These instructions determine whether the body prioritizes repair or accelerates breakdown. Time provides the backdrop, but signals decide the pace. At the cellular level, the body is constantly renewing itself. Proteins are rebuilt, membranes repaired, DNA checked and corrected. This process is efficient when conditions allow it. But when daily inputs repeatedly disrupt balance, repair becomes incomplete. Aging then appears to speed up, not because the body has lost its capacity to heal, but because it is never given the chance to finish healing. Each meal sends biochemical messages that either support stability or create metabolic turbulence. Foods that cause sharp blood sugar fluctuations are a powerful example. When glucose spikes and crashes repeatedly, insulin must work overtime. Cells become less responsive, inflammation rises, and repair pathways are deprioritized. Over years, this metabolic noise leaves a visible imprint. Skin loses elasticity, energy becomes erratic, and recovery slows. These changes are often blamed on age, yet they are the accumulated result of signals repeated thousands of times. Inflammation plays a similar role. It is meant to be brief and targeted, a short-lived response to injury or threat. Certain dietary patterns keep inflammatory pathways active long after they are needed. When inflammation becomes chronic, it accelerates tissue degradation. Collagen breaks down faster than it can be rebuilt. Blood vessels stiffen. The brain becomes more sensitive to stress. These changes are not random. They follow the instructions the body has been receiving daily. Hormones translate these signals into action. Insulin, cortisol, growth hormone, and sex hormones orchestrate repair, energy use, and regeneration. When food choices constantly disrupt this hormonal conversation, the body shifts into a survival mode. Storage increases, repair decreases, and stress hormones dominate. Biological age advances even if chronological age remains unchanged. What makes this process subtle is that it unfolds quietly. There is no single moment where aging suddenly accelerates. It happens through repetition. A food choice made once has little consequence. The same choice made daily becomes a message the body believes. Over time, cells adapt to that message, reshaping metabolism, structure, and function accordingly. Avoidance becomes powerful in this context. Removing foods that disrupt metabolic harmony reduces the volume of damaging signals. The body responds quickly. Inflammation lowers. Hormonal rhythms stabilize. Repair pathways reactivate. These shifts do not make time stop, but they change how the body experiences time. Aging becomes slower, smoother, less chaotic. This is why two people of the same age can appear decades apart in vitality. Their cells have been living under different instructions. One body has been constantly interrupted, the other protected from unnecessary stress. Youthfulness, in this sense, is not about adding more interventions, but about subtracting the signals that force the body into premature decline. When the body is spared repeated disruption, it reveals a remarkable resilience. Repair becomes efficient again. Energy stabilizes. The visible markers of aging soften because the invisible systems beneath them are no longer overwhelmed. The body does not resist time, it cooperates with it under conditions that honor its design. Inflammation is one of the body's most intelligent defense systems, yet it becomes one of the most damaging forces when it is activated without rest. In its natural state, inflammation arrives quickly, repairs what is needed, and then recedes. It clears debris, signals healing, and restores balance. Problems arise when certain foods keep this system switched on continuously, turning a temporary response into a chronic condition that quietly accelerates aging from the inside out. Many foods common in modern diets repeatedly provoke the immune system. Highly refined carbohydrates, industrial seed oils, and chemically altered additives send signals that something is wrong, even when no injury is present. The immune system responds faithfully, releasing inflammatory messengers meant to protect tissue. When this happens meal after meal, day after day, the body never receives the signal that it is safe to stand down. Repair mechanisms become inefficient because inflammation consumes the very resources required for regeneration. This persistent inflammatory state breaks down connective tissue faster than it can be rebuilt. Collagen, which gives skin its elasticity and joints their resilience, becomes fragile under constant inflammatory pressure. The skin begins to thin and lose its adaptive quality. Wrinkles are not simply signs of age, but evidence of tissue that has been asked to repair itself under stress for too long. The same process unfolds deeper within the body, affecting tendons, cartilage, and the lining of blood vessels. Blood vessels are particularly sensitive to chronic inflammation. Inflammatory molecules damage the delicate endothelial lining that regulates blood flow and nutrient exchange. Over time, vessels stiffen and lose their ability to expand and contract efficiently. This reduces oxygen delivery to tissues and increases strain on the heart. The aging of the cardiovascular system often begins decades before symptoms appear, driven quietly by dietary inflammation. The brain is not spared from this process. Chronic inflammation crosses the blood-brain barrier, altering neurotransmitter balance and increasing sensitivity to stress. Cognitive sharpness dulls, mood becomes more fragile, and sleep quality declines. These changes are often attributed to aging, yet they reflect an immune system that has been overstimulated for years without relief. Avoiding foods that fuel inflammation does not suppress the immune system. It restores its intelligence. When inflammatory triggers are removed, the immune response becomes precise again. Inflammation appears when needed and resolves efficiently. This shift allows tissues to complete their repair cycles fully, rather than existing in a constant state of partial healing. The body responds quickly to this change. Swelling reduces. Joint stiffness eases. Skin tone improves as microcirculation stabilizes. Energy becomes more consistent because the immune system is no longer competing with metabolism for resources. These improvements are not cosmetic effects, they are signs that the body has exited survival mode. Chronic inflammation ages the body by exhausting its repair capacity. Avoidance of inflammatory foods is not about restriction, but relief. It removes the background noise that confuses the immune system. With fewer false alarms, the body redirects energy toward maintenance and renewal. Over time, this reduction in inflammatory load reshapes how the body experiences aging. The tissues remain responsive. Recovery becomes faster. The visible signs of age soften because the internal environment is no longer hostile to regeneration. Aging slows not because inflammation disappears entirely, but because it is finally allowed to do its job and then rest. Hormones quietly determine how old the body behaves, often long before age is visible on the surface. They are not just chemical messengers, they are timing mechanisms, coordinating when the body should build, repair, store, or release energy. When hormonal rhythms are stable, the body functions with efficiency and clarity. When they are disrupted repeatedly, biological aging accelerates even if outward habits appear healthy. Insulin sits at the center of this process. Its role is to guide energy into cells, but when certain foods force insulin to spike repeatedly, cells begin to resist its signal. This resistance creates a state where energy is abundant in the bloodstream but scarce inside the cell. Repair processes suffer because the body is stuck managing excess rather than rebuilding tissue. Over time, this imbalance promotes fat storage, inflammation, and accelerated aging. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, is deeply influenced by diet. Foods that cause rapid blood sugar fluctuations force cortisol to rise in order to stabilize energy levels. When this happens chronically, cortisol remains elevated beyond its useful window. High cortisol breaks down muscle tissue, suppresses immune repair, and interferes with sleep. Aging accelerates not because stress exists, but because the body is never allowed to exit stress mode. Sex hormones also respond to dietary signals. Testosterone, estrogen, and growth hormone support muscle maintenance, skin thickness, bone density, and cognitive function. Certain foods interfere with their production or increase their breakdown. When these hormones decline prematurely, tissues lose their regenerative capacity. The body becomes more fragile, less resilient, and slower to recover from stress. Hormonal disruption rarely announces itself dramatically. It begins as subtle fatigue, inconsistent energy, slower recovery, and changes in body composition. These signs are often dismissed as normal aging, yet they reflect endocrine systems struggling to maintain rhythm under constant dietary interference. Avoiding foods that destabilize hormones allows natural cycles to reassert themselves. Insulin sensitivity improves. Cortisol regains its daily rhythm, rising when needed and falling when rest is appropriate. Growth hormone release during sleep becomes more efficient, supporting tissue repair and metabolic balance. These changes restore internal order rather than forcing external correction. The endocrine system thrives on predictability. When meals are composed of foods that do not provoke extreme responses, the body can anticipate and prepare. This predictability reduces metabolic stress. Repair pathways receive uninterrupted windows of time to function. Aging slows not through intervention, but through the absence of disruption. Hormonal stability also influences the nervous system. Balanced hormones support emotional regulation, focus, and calm. When insulin and cortisol fluctuate wildly, the brain perceives instability and increases vigilance. This state amplifies stress and further disrupts hormones, creating a feedback loop that accelerates decline. Removing dietary triggers breaks this loop at its source. As hormonal harmony returns, the body feels younger not because it has been stimulated, but because it has been allowed to function as designed. Strength stabilizes. Sleep deepens. Skin reflects improved repair rather than compensation. Aging becomes a quieter process, unfolding without the chaos introduced by daily hormonal disturbance. Mitochondria are the quiet engines that power every function of the body, yet they are rarely considered when aging is discussed. These microscopic structures convert nutrients into usable energy, allowing cells to repair, communicate, and adapt. When mitochondria are efficient, the body feels vibrant and resilient. When they are overwhelmed, aging accelerates from the inside out, often long before visible signs appear. Every food the body processes places a demand on these cellular engines. Whole foods require minimal conversion and generate clean energy. Heavily processed foods, on the other hand, force mitochondria to work harder for less return. Additives, refined sugars, and industrial fats increase oxidative stress, producing free radicals that damage mitochondrial membranes. This damage reduces energy output and increases cellular fatigue. Oxidative stress is not inherently harmful. In small amounts, it signals adaptation. The problem arises when oxidative load exceeds the body's ability to neutralize it. Processed foods amplify this load repeatedly throughout the day. Over time, mitochondria spend more energy managing damage than producing energy. Cells shift from repair to survival, prioritizing basic function over regeneration. This shift affects every system. Muscles lose endurance because energy production becomes inefficient. Skin repair slows as cells struggle to meet baseline demands. Brain cells become more vulnerable to stress, reducing focus and memory. These changes are often attributed to age, yet they reflect energy systems that have been chronically overloaded. Avoiding foods that place excessive strain on mitochondria reduces this internal burden. When oxidative pressure decreases, mitochondria regain efficiency. Energy production becomes smoother, requiring less emergency response. Cells once again have surplus energy to invest in repair, maintenance, and adaptation. Mitochondrial health also influences inflammation and hormonal balance. Efficient energy production reduces the release of inflammatory byproducts. Stable energy availability supports consistent hormone signaling. The body moves out of crisis management and into optimization. Aging slows not because mitochondria are enhanced artificially, but because they are no longer being sabotaged. Sleep quality improves as mitochondrial stress decreases. During deep sleep, mitochondria undergo repair and renewal. When dietary inputs interfere with this process, recovery is incomplete. Removing mitochondrial stressors allows sleep to fulfill its regenerative role, further amplifying anti-aging effects. Physical endurance is another reflection of mitochondrial efficiency. When energy production is clean and reliable, movement feels lighter. Fatigue becomes proportional to effort rather than overwhelming. The body recovers faster because energy is available for repair rather than diverted to damage control. The cumulative effect of reducing mitochondrial load is visible vitality. The body appears younger because its cells are functioning with less friction. Aging does not halt, but it becomes more graceful. Time continues to pass, yet the internal environment remains supportive rather than hostile to renewal. Mitochondria respond quickly to improved conditions. Within weeks of reducing oxidative stress, energy levels rise and inflammation falls. Over years, this consistency reshapes biological age. The body reflects not the absence of time, but the presence of efficient energy at the cellular level. Here is the expanded keynote number 4, approximately 600 words, continuous narrative, reflective and scientific tone, no headings, no ending sentence. Mitochondria are the silent engines behind every visible sign of vitality. They convert what we eat into the energy required for repair, movement, thought, and resilience. When these engines function efficiently, the body feels light, responsive, and capable of renewal. When they are overloaded, aging accelerates quietly, often mistaken for the natural decline of time rather than the result of constant cellular strain. Every food choice places a demand on mitochondrial systems. Whole, minimally processed foods arrive with instructions the body understands. They are converted efficiently, producing energy with minimal waste. In contrast, highly processed foods demand excessive biochemical effort. Refined sugars, damaged fats, and artificial compounds increase oxidative byproducts, forcing mitochondria to prioritize damage control over energy production. Oxidative stress emerges when free radicals outpace the body's ability to neutralize them. Small amounts of this stress are adaptive, but chronic exposure exhausts cellular defenses. Mitochondrial membranes become damaged, reducing their capacity to generate energy. Cells begin to operate in a low-energy state, sacrificing repair in favor of survival. This internal fatigue manifests externally as dull skin, slower recovery, and declining endurance. As energy production falters, the body compensates by increasing stress signaling. Cortisol rises, inflammation increases, and hormonal balance destabilizes. These responses are not failures, but emergency adaptations. Over time, however, they reshape the body's baseline. Aging accelerates because the body is constantly reacting rather than regenerating. Avoiding foods that overload mitochondria removes this constant pressure. When oxidative load decreases, mitochondria regain efficiency. Energy production stabilizes, and cells once again generate surplus energy beyond basic survival. This surplus is what fuels repair. Damaged proteins are replaced, membranes rebuilt, and genetic material maintained with greater precision. Sleep becomes deeper when mitochondrial stress is reduced. During rest, mitochondria undergo maintenance and replication. When dietary stress interferes, this renewal is incomplete. Removing mitochondrial disruptors allows sleep to fulfill its restorative purpose, amplifying energy production and resilience the following day. The nervous system also benefits from improved mitochondrial function. Brain cells are among the most energy dependent in the body. When energy is clean and consistent, cognition sharpens and emotional regulation improves. The mind feels clearer, more focused, and less reactive. This mental vitality often mirrors physical youthfulness. Physical movement becomes more efficient as well. Muscles rely on mitochondrial energy to contract and recover. When energy is readily available, endurance increases and soreness diminishes. Recovery accelerates because muscles can repair microdamage promptly. Movement feels sustainable rather than draining. Over time, these internal changes become visible. The body appears younger not because time has been reversed, but because friction has been removed from its systems. Aging continues, but it unfolds with stability rather than strain. Mitochondria do not need enhancement or stimulation, they need relief from unnecessary burden. When that relief is consistent, biological age begins to reflect efficiency rather than exhaustion. Avoidance is often misunderstood as restriction, but biologically it functions as protection. When the body is no longer forced to process inputs that disrupt its internal order, it regains clarity. Signals become cleaner, feedback becomes reliable, hunger, fullness, energy, and fatigue once again communicate accurately. This internal coherence is one of the most overlooked contributors to slow, graceful aging. The body thrives on consistency. When dietary signals are chaotic, systems compete for attention. Blood sugar fluctuates, stress hormones rise, digestion struggles, and sleep becomes fragmented. Each system attempts to compensate, but compensation is costly. Over time, this internal noise accelerates wear. Aging speeds up not because systems fail, but because they are never allowed to synchronize. Avoiding damaging foods reduces this noise. When inflammatory triggers, hormonal disruptors, and mitochondrial stressors are removed, the body shifts out of constant adjustment. Metabolic pathways stabilize. Energy flows predictably. Repair processes are no longer interrupted by emergency responses. This stability creates an environment where aging unfolds more slowly and with less resistance. Psychologically, avoidance simplifies decision-making. When the body feels better consistently, the mind relaxes its vigilance. Stress decreases not through effort, but through alignment. Reduced stress lowers cortisol, which further supports repair and hormonal balance. The nervous system begins to operate from a state of safety rather than threat. Sleep improves as internal coherence returns. The body no longer enters the night inflamed or overstimulated. Growth hormone release becomes more efficient, supporting tissue repair and metabolic renewal. Morning energy feels natural rather than forced. These shifts compound over time, reinforcing biological youthfulness. Digestion also benefits from avoidance. Foods that irritate the gut lining or disrupt the microbiome create low-grade inflammation that spreads systemically. Removing these foods allows the gut to heal. Nutrient absorption improves. Immune signaling becomes more precise. The gut-brain connection stabilizes, influencing mood, focus, and resilience. Consistency in avoidance builds trust between body and mind. When the body responds predictably to choices, confidence grows. This confidence reduces emotional eating, impulsive decisions, and stress-driven behaviors. The relationship with food becomes calmer, guided by feedback rather than compulsion. Over years, this coherence reshapes biological age. Cells experience fewer interruptions. Repair cycles complete fully. Hormonal rhythms remain intact. Energy systems operate efficiently. The visible markers of aging soften because the invisible systems beneath them are functioning with minimal friction. Avoidance is not about denial. It is about allowing the body to operate within its optimal design. When damaging inputs are consistently excluded, the body does not struggle to stay young. It simply ages at the pace it was meant to, supported by harmony rather than conflict within its systems.